All right, today we are going to learn something about indicators to catch some donks like this guy. 3 indicators that you need to know about. Stay tuned.
That's a big round, bro!
Okay, today we are headed out for another Stillwater adventure. We're gonna let you come and watch what happens. First and foremost, we're gonna be fishing from shore again, which is never a bad thing, especially this time of year. The fish are gonna be in closer. Today specifically, we're gonna look at different types of indicators in a Stillwater application, including the new drop back bungs from Fulling Mill. And we're gonna see which of these indicators is going to be best for you given the situations that you're gonna find when you're fishing Stillwater. Doesn't matter if you're from shore or from a boat. There are a couple of instances where the shore angler is gonna be a little bit handicapped by a couple of these indicators, but we'll watch those, see how it works, and at the end we'll kind of give our analysis of what I would use in those given situations. So anyway, come along. We've heard we might be able to get in some big fish. Well, we know we will. We know they're there. We just don't know if we're going to get into them. So follow us along. Okay, today I am seated in my throne of lies, as all fishermen sit. We're going to learn about a few things regarding indicators. So number one, that fish was caught with a slip indicator, one of the 3 types that we're going to talk about. For these different indicators, there's going to be different situations, and we're talking Stillwater, 3 different situations that you may want to use these specific indicators for. So the first one is a slip indicator. And the slip indicator is primarily using a little peg, and you slide your leader and tippet up through there. We'll put a diagram on there or point you to another video. What the nice thing is about this is you can peg a little loop of tippet so that your indicator stays stationary on your line, but once you hook into a fish, the pressure undoes that little loop and this will slide freely. This is a very, very popular Stillwater indicator. If you were going to just start with indicator fishing, this is the one that I would use because of that ability to, again, move that up and down. Now that's going to come in handy as you fish different depths and you may need a longer leader or shorter leader. This is really easy to move up and down your line or your leader or tippet. But more importantly, you could fish, say, a 20-foot leader and have this at the top of that, so 15, 20 feet down beneath it. And as soon as this thing comes loose at the point you catch a fish and get that tension, it pops it off and it will slide freely. So you really could bring the fish all the way up to your top fly. So we've typically, our leader is going to be 15 to 20 feet long. Our flies are 5 feet apart with tags, about 4 to 5 inch tags. And this indicator is going to sit up above all of that, obviously. But the nice thing is that you, again, this will slip. This will allow you to land the fish, reach down, and not have the indicator stuck up in your tip top. So this is the first one. Again, if you're starting out, this is probably the one to use. And we'll move on to the next one, which is probably more common, people know about, but it is not the ideal one for a Stillwater indicator, but it is good for some things. So we're going to continue fishing, trying out some different methods here, and we're going to check back in and go on to the next indicator here in a minute. Okay, so we've got the slip indicator on, and my setup is, so obviously this is a floating line, and this is a 6-weight. This happens to be a 6-weight 10-foot. It's one of my favorite ways to fish Stillwater from shore, is a little longer rod. It gets me a little further out. gives you more leverage, especially with the indicator rigs. And you know, as I watch to you guys, fish is going to hit and you're going to say, fish on. I'm going to turn around and boom. But the nice thing is, right now the fish are eating a little bit higher in the water column, so I don't need a ton of distance between the flies and the indicator. But I can adjust that. So we could go down as probably as deep as 10 feet if I needed. Right here the fish are 4 to 6 feet. So it's just a matter of keeping it at that zone. We've got a little bit of a cross breeze, so one of the strategies with any indicator, and this applies to the next two that we'll talk about, so I'm just going to kind of address that here. We've got some wind coming this way. That's going to tend to bow my floating line in the direction of the wind, and in that case you kind of want to mend, and that gets your indicator still kind of floating without drip or drag. That can be good in some cases, but anyway, slip indicator is a good one for a lot of reasons, like I mentioned. And so yeah, like that fish we just released, the idea is you just get that out there, you kind of gauge and vary the distance from shore and the depth that you're fishing, which again is a great advantage of this indicator rig, because here I'm just going like 20-30 feet out and I'll keep it stationary. The waves are going to give it a little motion. Little chironomids down there are going to be bouncing around. Fish will hopefully eat them. And then I just kind of mooch my way very slowly back into shore. And that's, again, that's universal with most of the indicator rigs that we're going to use today. And that is just cover as much water, as much depth as you can. Once you dial in kind of where they are, then you just let it go. The third indicator, which we'll talk about, is an important one to pay attention to because it has a very specific purpose when we're fishing on still water, and it also has some very specific disadvantages as opposed to this one. All right, our next indicator, responsible for this slab. Anyway, we're gonna let her go. Okay, this is the next level of indicator. I would say largely much more sensitive than even the slip indicator, or the last one that we'll talk about. And that is the drop back bung from Fulling Mill. Howard Croston's invention. I mean, it's newer. We do have a video, we'll link that below if you want to see exactly how to set it up. It uses 2 bobber stops, and it uses the fly's weight to balance it so that it's perfectly vertical or near to it. The nice thing about this is if you have a fish that comes up, to eat it, that will release the tension and it will fall on its side. If the fish eats it going down, of course, it's going to do the downward motion. The nice thing about that is it will catch fish. It will indicate on fish that you probably wouldn't get, especially the upward ones, because of that balance point. So, well, I would say the slip indicator's probably the easiest one to get into. This one is very, very sensitive, and I would say probably more the one that I use nowadays. Now, there's a couple of downsides to this one, and that is that you need to balance it. And there's little instructions on here, and we talk about it in our other video on the way to fly. So with this one, for instance, you can use three 2.5 millimeter beads or two 3 millimeter beads, tungsten, and that will essentially offset the weight of the indicator and keep it that neutral buoyancy, so it's just sitting there like that. Now again, the nice thing about that is that you will get, when that thing moves in any direction, this either goes up, down, sideways, it moves a lot. It does, because it uses the bobber stops, it's a little bit more difficult to adjust. Like you can move it up and down, but you can't move it very easily over knots. You can with the slip indicator, and then the final indicator we'll talk about at the end here is probably the most adjustable, but also has the most limitations when it comes to Stillwater, but will still work for Stillwater. So to kind of summarize this, one of the reasons we want to show you about indicator fishing on Stillwater is that you just need a floating line. Your 9'5" weight could work, maybe not for these donks, but it would work. And at the end of the day, you're out on the water getting shots at good fish with the existing gear you have. Now, if you watched our other videos, and we know we fish a lot of other different lines, we have boats, float tubes, all that, but we're focusing right now, especially we're early in the season, shore fishing can be just as good as being out in a boat, and indicators are a key part of that. So we're going to continue with this one for a little bit. We're going to swing back for the final indicator and then kind of put it all together and show you how you can catch more donks with indicators. So like I just mentioned, the nice thing about this is it's super sensitive. It is a little bit more difficult to work with. Now that has cocked, my indicator is now standing upright and the flies are balancing it. Now we have a little bit of wind, like I mentioned previously. So what I tend to do with this one especially is I need to mend it. And because the flies are already at depth, it just moved them out of that zone. Boom, back up. And I'm watching it, like I mentioned, watching it for downward motion or having it pop up because the tension's been released because the fish has that in the mouth. And that's really it. Again, the main difference and disadvantage there is if I do want to take this off, and now I can slide these up and down, but if I do want to take the whole thing off, it won't go over knots, so you kind of have to take your rig down. Not the end of the world, but it's something to be aware of as you fish. So anyway, we'll give this one a try before we move on to the third one and go from there.
Ooh, big fish. Nice.
All right. Well, this is that little guy. Nice little spring rainbow. Okay, so now you know the drop back bung is a pretty dang good indicator. I would say that in normal conditions, it would not have been so sensitive. So that's where this one shines. Sensitivity. Wind is kind of a mixed bag with this one, but it actually did great in this case. Now on to the third. All right, for our third and final indicator, we've got the Oros. This little guy will go back to his spot. And rather than pull the one off my rod, I'll show you a different color one. So many of you know the Oros indicators. They are similar style to airlock, where you basically have two pieces. This piece is going to have a little slit. Put your leader or tippet, clamp this one on top, and there you go. It's not going to slide up and down. Now, the reason I would use this is, let's say I'm fishing with a long leader and a number of flies, and the other two indicators that we've talked about, you actually have to, you can adjust up to the point of your, let's say your first fly, the top fly. With this one, if you needed to, you could snip that off and put this down lower. Obviously, you don't want it below any flies, but the idea here is that this is adjustable, and it will go obviously over knots because you can take it totally apart, which is nice because you can move it to a totally different rig. You can put it on a rig. Let's say you're fishing without an indicator. The other two rigs we've talked about, you would have to snip the leader or at least tie it off. We'll use a tippet ring often, or a micro swivel, and then slide the indicator on and retie. With this one, I could take any rig that I want and I could just attach this and I'm fishing an indicator. Now, obviously the big downside to something like this in a stillwater situation with a long leader is the fact that I can't reel all the way to the flies. I can only reel as far as this guy goes. Once that hits my tip top, the top guy at the end of the rod, I'm done. And that, if you're not paying attention to that, it's going to be a little bit dangerous. This is not going to play well with the fish on the end and your rod tip. So I would caution using that. Now, that said, I do carry all three of these indicators usually. I'd say whatever one suits you the best. The Oros is not my first choice for stillwater, but it does have an application. Let's say I'm fishing some dry flies on a stillwater and all of a sudden the fish are going deeper. Maybe I don't want to use a dry dropper. I just put one of these on, adjust my flies, and I'm set. So this is a good one to use. It goes along with all the rest of them. Okay, well, let's keep fishing and see how they do. All right, the slip indicator in. Indicators don't work. Anyway, we're gonna let this guy run free, but swim away, buddy. Sitting on my throne, thinking about that fish. Get out there and fish indicators. These are three indicators that I think I carry with me, all three of these, wherever I go, because the conditions may warrant any one of those at any time. So again, to recap, you got the last one, the Oros, which is great if you don't need to reel it all the way up. The drop back bung is kind of the same thing, much more sensitive. The slip indicator is probably the easiest one to get into, and it's the most versatile because it will slip up and down. We do have all these listed. Check in the link below. Check them out at flyfishfood.com and get out there and catch some fish. Donks.